Thank you once again for joining us for another installment of the Meet the Manager interview series. Today I'm joined by Chris Bartel, and Chris is the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Equity Research at Fidelity Investments. Fidelity has enjoyed quite a bit of success over the years at our Lipper Fund Awards, and this year was no different. They won 8 awards across 6 different disciplines in their Select Portfolio Series. Specifically, the Select Consumer Finance, Energy, Retailing, and Pharmaceutical funds took home awards, as well as the Advisor Biotechnology and Industrials funds. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
I'd like to, if you would, Chris, talk a little bit about some of the drivers behind your continued success and well-representation at the Fund Awards.
Sure. Well, when you think about what drives our sector funds, it's really a couple things. First of all, the managers who run these funds are experts in their space. They're really focused on whether it's healthcare, with cyclicals, consumer, and that's all they do, focus on that narrow area and get to know their companies, the management teams, and the stocks really, really well. The key thing to emphasize, they're not doing it alone. Each of these teams is has deep support behind them. So Tobias Wheelow has probably 30 analysts around the globe feeding ideas for the industrials and materials funds. At the same time, you're really making use of a global research platform. So we have offices in Hong Kong, London, and Tokyo. Providing the global perspective is critical if you're looking at a sector like energy, for example, where there's so many macro events around the world that can move these stocks. And then the last thing I would say, then this really is unique to Fidelity, is we have teams across all the different asset classes. When you think about the capital structure of a company, what really can move the stocks, having the largest high yield research operation of any of our competitors, sitting just one floor away from the equity team. If you think about the money market or fixed income teams that we have, they provide a different perspective on each of these companies. And then lastly, we have a dedicated real estate team, which can give great perspective. So bringing these all together with the fundamental equity analysts, where there are a little over 130 of them around the globe, gives us the resources to do this consistently. The last point I'd make is just one on performance. So looking at the last 3 years, 7 out of the 10 major sector funds have beaten their ETF counterparts, and about 72% of the funds across the entire sector fund lineup have outperformed their benchmark on a 3-year trailing basis.
Wow, that's impressive. Tell me, if you would, Chris, a little bit more about the individual PMs themselves. Talk about their strategies and the managers themselves.
Sure. So with the Select Energy portfolio that's run by John Dowd, John has been in the industry for more than 20 years now, and he's been running that fund since 2006. Next, I go to Tobias Wheelow. Tobias has 14 years of experience in the industry. He's been on that fund also since 2006. And I mentioned the deep team across the globe of industrial and materials analysts that support him. On the healthcare side, we received 2 awards. Rajiv Kaul has 17 years of experience and has been running our biotech fund since 2005. We also have Asher Analik, who recently took over the Select Pharmaceuticals fund. Peter Dixon, who is running Select Retailing, has about 7 years of experience covering consumer stocks. He's been on that fund for 3 years and is our global consumer sector head. And then lastly, Shilpa Amira has recently taken over the Select Consumer Finance Fund and has about 4 years of experience.
Sounds like you value experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you look for in building out such an investment team?
Sure. We really look for a balance. So across each of the sectors, we have a mix of analysts like the fund managers who I've just mentioned, who have deep experience in their industries, have been covering companies for years, know management teams really well. But then we also have a group of analysts that have a fresh perspective. So they rotate through several different industries and they take the experiences of the prior industry when they come into their new one. And so having that balanced team really gives us both the deep industry experience but also a fresh perspective, which we think is the best approach.
And now I know you've touched upon this a little bit already, but tell us a little bit more about the investment approach that is employed by your sector PMs.
Sure. So I mentioned just over 130 analysts around the globe, and the core fundamental approach is bottoms-up fundamental research. So what that means is we want all of our analysts and the portfolio managers who manage these sector funds to be on the ground, meeting with companies, getting to know the management teams, understanding the earnings drivers, putting together their models so that they come up with their own estimates of what the earning streams of companies are like. We believe over the longer term, earnings do drive stocks, and so if we can get the earnings right, the stocks will follow. So they then will use the inputs from the other asset classes. That's how they come to their conclusions.
If you would now, thinking through all of that, tell us what type of investors should consider investing in sector funds.
Sure. I think that sector funds are a great building block, and it's really something that I think it lends itself to self-directed investing. We don't view any individual sector fund as a one-stop shop. Generally, you might use a group of them together, but what they really do is they give you, instead of buying certain individual stocks within a sector, exposure to an industry, and then you're relying on our fund managers who are meeting with the management teams and industry consultants, competitors, suppliers, customers to really pick the best ideas and get them in the portfolio so you get exposure to the best names.
Yep. Well, those are some great insights, Chris, across the sector series. I appreciate your time today and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us as well.
Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Please visit www.fidelity.com or advisor.fidelity.com for a prospectus or, if available, a summary prospectus containing this information.